Good
and
morning.
moving towards second day of our faculty entrepreneurship development program for our budding entrepreneurs and those who are interested to start their own business. Yesterday, our student Rakshit explained in detail the differences between businessman, entrepreneurs, and how to become an entrepreneur, what are the fundamental things you need to do, and all. Rakshit, I welcome you, my dear student,
Thank you, ma'am.
dearest
Thank you,
student.
everyone.
Yeah. Rakshit is not only good in studies, he is good in theater and some artwork. He is like or complete student with many curricular, extracurricular activities. In addition to very good in studies, he was. Welcome you again, Rakshit, for your cooperation with our department as alumnus of this institute. Dear participants, today Rakshit is going to deal with some practical approach. How actually you need to do, what are the documents you need to prepare, what all you need to do practically, or what the law says practically, what you need to do to start your own business or to become an entrepreneur. I hope today also you will definitely enjoy the session, and I have confidence our Rakshit will do best presentation. He will contribute uh, to the best extent about the practical approach how to become an entrepreneur. Okay, friends, once again, good morning to you all and welcome to this wonderful session by our best student Rakshit. Now over to Rakshit. Rakshit, your Selvan, unmute Rakshit.
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone. Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure for me to be in this August gathering in the webinar, which focuses on entrepreneurship development and starting a business in India. So, let me just switch off my video and share the screen of the PowerPoint presentation, and we'll start with the session now. Just a minute. Okay. So till yesterday, we found out the basics that a person requires to be an entrepreneur. Creates employment generation. So the person who does that is called as an entrepreneur. Now we found out the differences between businessman and entrepreneur. So in businessman, it is an existing business ideas, whereas entrepreneur is totally a new business idea. And innovation is the key for entrepreneurship, whereas in businessman, innovation potential is limited. So the products and services with which businessmen deal, they generally have a high demand in the market. As an entrepreneur, using his idea, he creates a demand for his products. Demand would not be there in the market, but he creates a demand for the market for his products or services in the market. But since the products and services are already there in the market, businessmen face a lot of competition. A lot of competitors are there, and hence businessmen have to be worried about competition. Whereas for an entrepreneur, competition may or may not exist. If he is creating a whole new market, that market requires new participants. So when other participants come into the market, then the entrepreneur will face a competition. So businesses are majorly profit focused, whereas entrepreneurship is market focused, seeking to generate markets and create more employment potential. Businessmen, it is the businesses are relatively less riskier. Less risky in the sense the businessman has a fair idea about the products, the services, the profit margins, and other things. So he would be aware of the amount of loss he might incur if he is not doing the business properly, or the amount of presentation which or the amount of profits which he will generate if the business is doing good. Whereas for an entrepreneur, it is a completely new area, so he has to calculate all of these right from the scratch. So in the existing market, businessmen seek to capture market share, whereas an entrepreneur totally creates a new market. So and then what are the qualities that is required to become an entrepreneur? So okay, at the end of the presentation, I'll definitely share the presentation with you all. Yeah. So what it takes to be an entrepreneur. So a person should have a determined mindset. He should have adequate amount of ambition and passion, and he should work towards his goals and objectives. He should know his target environment in the line of products or goods or services that he is going to offer to the market. And most under revered and neglected aspect is the good soft skills. Soft skills are very crucial in order to become a successful entrepreneur. The way he interacts with other people, the way he puts their needs over him. So they are all important aspects to be an entrepreneur. And the last part is he should have a fair idea about important laws and statutes. By idea, I do not mean complete expertise in that, but he should be aware of some important provisions of laws and statutes. So then we came across the opportunities in India. So how India has jumped in the rank of ease of doing business. It was 139 in 2010. It was 134 in 2013. It was 130 in 2016 and 63 in 2019. So these figures are given by World Bank, which is a part of the United Nations organizations. So World Bank gives the rankings of countries based on how easily a person can start a business in India. So India is on the right track in increasing its ease of doing business among the other nations. So the major reforms that happened were GST, demonetization, BME transactions, RERA, Real Estate Regulations Act, foreign trade policies were renewed to facilitate export of goods and services. Foreign direct investment, FDI or FII, foreign institutions were established in India so that more foreign investors could see the potential of Indian markets. And this is how the ease of doing business in India increased. So merely because the ease of doing business has increased, it does not translate to the fact that business can be done with small amount of capital or operating expenditures. Businesses cannot be started or function with small cash or capital or operating expenses. They require certain expenditures to facilitate business, which is dependent on the basis of the type of legal entity a person wants to establish. So then we discussed about the sectors of Indian economy. Primary sector has agriculture and allied activities such as fisheries, forestry, honey making, beekeeping, and other things. Secondary sector is primarily industrial sector. So all the products that are manufactured, produced, or they are traded come under the secondary sector. Tertiary sector is mainly the service sector, which means the infrastructure which is put into place to cater to primary and secondary sector. So the tertiary sector is nothing but it comprises of roadways, airways, waterways, banking channels, financial institutions, NBFCs, and other say telecommunication sectors. They all come under the service sector. And then we have the knowledge sector. Knowledge sector is that sector which produces intellectual property, which enables primary sector, secondary sector, as well as service sector to function smoothly. So who all come under knowledge sector? Educational institutions come under knowledge sector. Back office services, they come under knowledge sector. Hospitals, doctors come under knowledge sector. And then we have the last sector, which is culinary sector. Now, by the percentage of population engaged in this, this is the least. This is the sector wherein least amount of population is engaged in. But this is the sector which takes all the important decisions pertaining to the other four sectors. This sector is called a gold collar job sector or a gold collar professional sector. This sector comprises of CEOs, CFOs, business managers, the board of directors, auditors, lawyers, and doctors as well. So they all come under the culinary sectors. So, and then in any sector, a business or a service organization will have these two environments in them. One is the macro environment, the other one is a micro environment. Macro environment is, let us say, I have a business, that business has no control over the macro environment. It has no control or very less control in it. Changes are purely external, and this market is outside the periphery of the business. So factors in market macro environment are political factors, which deal with the political stability of a country, economic stability of the country, how well the economy of a country is doing, socio-cultural aspects, the demographies of people, their spending behaviors, their beliefs, their customs, they all come under socio-cultural environment. Technological environment. Now this is the king of driving forces. So technology is shaping how things are being, how business is being done, how services are being provided. So technological developments are not within the control of any business. They just have to adapt to the technological changes that is happening. Then legal environment. This comprises of laws and regulations that govern business entities in India. Even on this day of presentation, India has one of the complex legal systems. There are multiplicity of laws and there are many laws. Now GST reduced the multiplicity of law to certain extents, but there are still many other laws which are there who are multiple which means there are multiple laws. So those outdated laws have to be quashed and new laws have to be made. And then the environmental aspect. So this environmental aspect has all the natural resources which are required for survival of human beings. Oxygen, water, food, they all come under environmental laws. Yes, ma'am. Okay. So they all come under the environmental.
Proceed.
Okay, so environmental protection is important, and business have to contribute towards safeguarding and protecting their environment. So, any changes in the laws have to be adopted by a business. Then we come under the second environment, which is a micro environment, which is within the periphery of the business, but it is a whole cosmos in itself. So as you can see, the first letter is cosmic, which is competitors, organization, suppliers, market, intermediaries, customers. It is in the micro environment where all the key decisions which shape whether a business performs well and thrives are being taken. Competitors, we have the business have to identify their competitors, their strategies, and they have to play in towards their strength to overcome their competitors. The second one is the organization itself. Okay, I think someone has a doubt. Yes, ma'am. Anybody who has a doubt? Okay. So the organization itself is how its internal business environment is performing. A sound, conducive working atmosphere is crucial for an business to perform smoothly. Then we have the suppliers. Suppliers of goods, products, or services, they are not merely our creditors. So supplier relationship is key to ensure that we get quality inputs that result in quality outputs. And then we have the market. Now, without knowing our market and which market we have to target, a business cannot generate good profits. So identification of market is the key aspect, and based on the market strategies will be formulated. Then we have the intermediaries, like the banking and the finance, which are there, our bankers, our financiers, persons who have given us debt or investors for that matter. They all come under the intermediaries. And then we have the end customers. Customers are the king of market. So it is the customers who give you business and they drive the profits of the business. So good customer relationship is very crucial for a business to earn profits and sustain itself in the foreseeable future. Now, with this basic background, we entered what entrepreneurship means. So, a person should have these fundamental four characteristics, or he should identify these to become a successful entrepreneur. He has to first do a self SWOT analysis. SWOT means strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. He has to align his strength with opportunities so that his goals and objectives will become reality. The second part is identification of the market. So this I do not mean the target market. He should scan the market as to understand the needs of the markets and the market's trends and patterns, what the customers expect in the market, and also he should identify the pitfalls in the market, where a particular service is lacking in the market, what can be done to ensure that better products or services are being provided to the customers in the market. So these aspects come under identification of the market. So once he has identified the market and he has found out any pitfalls, a person or an entrepreneur will work on a tentative plan as to what he has to do, which product or services he can offer, how can he offer to it, how can it create a value addition for the customers. So they all come under designing a tentative plan and aligning competencies with the plan. So his strength, whether it matches with his plan and whether such plan is feasible and he's whether he is interested in doing it or not. So these come under aligning competencies with the plan. So and then we have the preliminary aspects, which is the first one pertaining to the business or product areas. So which products or goods or services a person has to say start business in, and suitable partnership or collaborations. By the word partnership, I mean suitable investors, so suitable capital providers, customers, suppliers, all such collaborations come under the second point. The third one, the person has to decide the type of legal entity. So I'll come to the legal entity aspect in today's presentation. And then the second one is he should have an initial budget. So the initial budget comprises of the four things. First one is the initial budget, which means all the preliminary expenditures that are required to start a business. So initial budget comprises of incorporation expenses, initial advertisement expenses, and other expenses that are needed to make sure that the customers are aware of that particular business. The second one is the capital requirement. So capital requirement can either be fixed capital or fluctuating capital. It does not necessarily mean share capital. Even purchase of plant and machinery, equipments, they all come under the capital requirement. So capital structure decisions, all of these come under the capital requirement budgets. The third one is operating costs. So in operating costs, usually it is the revenue budgets that are being prepared. So how human resource can be managed, how suppliers can be managed, how products can be placed competitively without any hindrance to profit margins, and other important decisions are taken in operating costs. And the fourth one is the compliance cost, which is legal and regulatory compliances. The cost of compliance is always lesser than a cost of non-compliance. So when business compliances are being made properly, the organization will not suffer any litigations or assessments or tax harassment for that matter. And then these are the key success factors which shape whether an entrepreneurship will become successful or not. First one is they should have a really good strategy, which is in terms with the requirements, what they want. The second one is the human resources. They should have competent human resources who make sure that the business objectives are being carried out smoothly. The third one is the processes and operations. So these human resource who are the most important aspect in the key success factors, they look after the processes and operations. They should see that there is no abnormal loss or wastage, and they should see that resources are being utilized optimally. Strategy should be effective and operations should be efficient. So this is the formula for a successful business. Strategy should be effective and operations should be efficient. The fourth limb is marketing and networking. Marketing involves making customers know about your products and your business position. Networking is having a good set of relationship with competent and trustworthy investors, legal counsel, suppliers, trade receivables, and other aspects. And Sound financial management. So the business has to be run only by finance and not by any other resource as well. So to sustain a business, key sound financial management is the key. Finances have to be good. They have to forecast their cash flows and they have to forecast how much finance is required in one particular business. The cost of decision making, all such things need to be factored. So that is sound financial management. Any aspect that pertains towards finance, managing cash, managing capital, they all come under sound financial management limb of the key successful factors. So based on this, any entrepreneur would be stuck with the choice of the legal entities that can be incorporated in India. Now, I have not considered foreign entities here because the focus of this session is to make sure that Indians become entrepreneurs. So, a person can do business individually. Now, the second point is sole proprietorship. Now, let me tell you how individual is different from sole proprietor in terms of business. An individual means I am doing a work. I can either be a freelancer or a consultant. If I be in that limb, I come under individual. Sole proprietor is one who is the owner of the business and who employs many other people. So that is how an individual and a sole proprietor is different in legal entity from a business point of view. But a legal status for both of them is the same. So we have the partnership firm. So what is a partnership firm? So more than two people come together, they pool their capital, they start the business, they earn rewards and they take on the losses equally. Their liability is unlimited. So regular partners in a regular partnership firm, the partner's liability is unlimited. Now suppose the partners want a benefit of company but also the flexibility of a partnership firm. They opt for limited liability partnership. It does not have all the tedious compliances of a company, but at the same time, it also offers a little bit more flexibility of a partnership firm and also ensures that good business regulations are being followed. That is a limited liability partnership. Now, again, I told you as in the yesterday session that it need not be the commercial entities wherein entrepreneurs are there. Even for non-profit organizations, they can be good entrepreneurs. So, non-profit organizations can be formed either as a Section 8 company or as an association of persons or body of individuals. There we come across commercial entities such as joint venture programs. So they all come under commercial entities. NPOs are non-profit organizations and cooperative society. Most of the educational institutions and trusts are under this limb. They are either NPOs or societies. And then the last form of legal entity is a company. Company has a perpetual succession. Companies can either be a private company or they can be a public company. A private company is a closely held company wherein not many public are involved. It is just between the say it is just between related persons. Whereas in public companies, it involves public money at large. So it is the shares of the public company which are being traded in the stock exchanges and not the shares of the private companies. So these are the various legal entities in India. And if, to start any of the legal entity, a person requires capital. So how are the sources of financing can be brought in by an entrepreneur in his business? The first limb is his own finance. In other words, the pocket money or his capital which he can bring. Now, by the word borrowed finance, I do not mean that it is a debt. So both own finance and borrowed finance can either be capital or external debt. Now, suppose in the first limb, family and relatives become the partners, then it becomes a capital. If the family and relatives they give an amount as a loan, that becomes a debt for the entrepreneur. So, irrespective of capital or debt, The sources of finances are two. One is own finance, which means entrepreneur is investing his or her own money in the business. The second one is borrowed finance. So initial stages of entrepreneurship, usually it will be the family and extended relatives from whom an entrepreneur seeks to borrow money. And second, they can borrow money from friends, contacts, and affiliations. So friends, contacts, and affiliations, they can either be as promoters, or they can be capital contributors, or they can be debt contributors. Now the third stage is they can approach for banks or financial institutions. So as you are aware, banks provide term loans, cash credits, overdraft accounts. So based on the whether they require working capital or a term loan, they can approach bank and financial institutions. Most of the cases, banks and financial institutions provide debt financing. The cost of debt is always lesser than the cost of equity, which means the debt is a sustainable, say, borrowing if the profits generated are being good. The fourth one is venture capital and angel investors. So they predominantly invest in startups which have high potential. They pay a lot of amount for let us say 20 to 25% equity shares of any company, and they expect returns in the form of dividends and valuations. So wherever dividends and valuations are involved, venture capitalists and angel investors will be interested. And the last limb of borrowed finance will be government schemes. As you are aware, Startup India, MSME provisions, Atmanirbhar Bharat, these are all certain schemes wherein government is assisting entrepreneurs in starting the business in India by banks and financial institutions. They can go for government schemes, but generally government would provide the schemes when the business is established and the profits are good in the business. So these are the alternatives of sources of financing. Now, if you look in this slide, own finance is in one circle and the borrowed finance is in another circle. It's a set diagram, and there is an intersection of these two circles. Now, this intersection, which has a slightly darker shade of blue, it suggests that there should be an approximate mix of own finance and borrowed finance. Now, there are certain entities which have own 100% own finance and there are no debts. So that's very good. But it is always preferable to have a slight balance between own finance and borrowed finance. Where there is a shortfall in own finance, borrowed finance comes to the rescue of a business. And when the own finance is more, the borrowed finance can be paid off. So there should be a approximate adequate balance between own finance and borrowed finance based on the nature of business and as per the requirements of the entrepreneur. Yeah. So after deciding the sources, after getting to know about the sources of financing, these are the important aspects that pertain towards operating of a business. The first one, as we discussed, is capital requirements. Capital should not be underestimated, and excess capital should also not be required. So right amount of capital has to be decided upon, and that capital should be adequate to carry the business operations of any entrepreneurship. The second one is CapEx and OpEx budgets. CapEx signifies capital expenditures. So those expenditures that are there in the business for long term, that is more than 1 to 3 years. So more than 3 years as well, they will be capital expenditures. So those expenditures should also be factored when the business is carried. Second one is operating expenditures. So operating expenditures pertain to lesser than 1 year. Let us say salaries or purchases of raw materials, goods, or legal consultant salaries. So all these come under operating expenditures. Generally, operating expenditures are recovered through sales, whereas it is the capital expenditure which takes more than 1 year time to get recovered. So capital expenditure should generate more sales. Then the third one is the type of legal entity that is required. Now, if investors come together for a long term and more than say 10 to 15 years, forming a company would be better. Now, if a person is not sure that an investor or his other affiliation or collaboration will be there with him for more than 3 to 4 years, in that case, forming a company will not make sense because cost legal compliance will be more than carrying the business there. So, in such cases, people can form partnership wherein there is an easy entry and easy exit, and not much legal compliances are there. So the type of legal entity has to be decided based on the nature and scope of the operations. If the operation scale is huge, then company would be preferred. If the operation scale is limited, then any other legal entity would do. So the type of legal entity is dependent on more than just one factor. So investor relationships, the target sales potential, the profit margins, and the expectation of the investors, and for how many years the persons would like to be in the market. So all these considerations have to be taken while deciding the legal entity. The fourth part is the managerial aspect. Any good business decision has to be taken by the management. So most of the times, you owners or entrepreneurs need not focus on the financial and management aspects. So if a entrepreneur is an engineer, he would not know about the finances, their management, what trade receivables are. So he would like to focus more on his core competencies, which is developing a business software or any other aspects wherein engineers are good at. So the other financial and human resource or other aspects of the business are to be managed by business managers. They can either be managers, they can either be the board of directors, depending on the type of legal entity. So those personnel should be competent. So they should know their business, they should know their forecast, they should know what they want, where the business has to be taken, what they need to do in the business. So competent management means a competent and a business which thrives. The fourth one is legal and regulatory needs. So the legal and regulatory needs are different based on the type of legal entity. They also differ based on the products or services which an entrepreneur has seeks to provide in the market. So before starting a type of legal entity, one of the areas wherein entrepreneurs will neglect is asking the legal and regulatory compliances. So they need not know in depth about the statutes, but they can at least have a fair idea about which all statutes are applicable to them and minimum amount as to what they should do to ensure that the legal and regulatory requirements are being fulfilled. So this is the fifth limb of the consideration. And the last limb and the solid limb is the relationships. How well they manage the relationship with their investors, who are either the providers of capital or debt, suppliers and customers. Those suppliers are concerned with inputs, customers are concerned with outputs. So how well their inputs and input services are, how well they are providing the services to the customers and products to the customers, and relationship with other stakeholders. So who are the other stakeholders? Now, stakeholders, they include investors, they include suppliers, they include customers, they include government, they include tax authorities, they include statutory authorities, they include any other people who are directly or indirectly associated with the business. So the relationship between these stakeholders should also be good so that no problem or no complications comes from outside the business. So these are the six key considerations which an entrepreneur has to focus and has to take care of to ensure that his business or entrepreneurship is performing well and does not face any legal compliances. Okay. So with this in mind, let us go towards the pricing of the products. Now, this is one of the most important strategies and wherein there are a lot of confusion between budding entrepreneurs as to which category their products come under. Whereas established and multinational companies, they are crystal clear about their pricing strategies. Low cost leadership. So low cost leadership is nothing but, as the name suggests, the cost will be very less and they seek market share. So let me give you an example. Xiaomi is one such product which follows low cost leadership. As you know, their phones are priced very competitively and within 10,000 to 15,000 range. I'm just quoting an example. Xiaomi is the company. So their MI phones are priced between 10 to 15,000, which is a low cost for the features that they are offering. Why do they place it at this level? Is because they seek to capture more market share. So they want more customers to buy their products and also to again buy their products after the shelf life of their products. So they seek customer should buy their product, more customers should buy their product, and more customers should again come to buy their new more products. So that is low cost leadership. Then we have product differentiation. So in product differentiation, they cater to a particular segment of a business community. Generally, the price of the products is very high and they offer more intellectual property and intangibles there. For example, Apple iPhone. So iPhone is a product which is comes under product differentiation. So compare the cost of a Xiaomi phone with the cost of an iPhone. iPhone is a lot costlier product because they come under product differentiation. So whom do Apple target? They target people in the higher or upper middle class and executive families. So people who can afford to buy that phone, they can buy such products wherein the services of product is really good. So if people who use iPhone, they can easily keep their phones for more than 4 years. 4 to 5 years is the shelf life of an iPhone, which means it functions smoothly till the end of 5 years. So after the fifth year, if another iPhone is launched, the person who has brought a previous iPhone seeks to buy the another new iPhone by Apple. So that is how product differentiation works. They have higher profit margins than local leaderships, but their market share is less and they cater to selective category of people. So then you have another niche category. So niche category, which means it is only one particular market that they want to focus. Other than that segment, they want to think about anything else. Let me give you an example. So there is a company by name Panasonic. You would have heard of it. It has multiple verticals. They manufacture televisions, they manufacture home theaters, they manufacture smartphones as well, fridge, washing machines as such. But they manufacture one series called as tough books or tough pads. So these are the tablets and laptops which are hardened and they are used by the military agencies only. So that particular product comes under the niche category. They have no intentions of selling those kind of products to the general public or customers. Their main focus of that particular product is for the military. So that comes under the niche category. So an entrepreneur, when he starts his or her business, they should know, they should decide upon these pricing strategies, whether they seek low cost leadership, whether they want a product differentiation, whether they want a niche category. Now, so there are people in the low cost leadership, the profit margin is less, but the number of sales are more. In the product differentiation, the number of sales are less, whereas the profit margin is more. In niche category, it is only one particular segment and the profit margin is more. So the entrepreneurs or budding businessmen, they have to decide the pricing strategies of their products or services based on these three categories. So these three categories are not just in commercial organizations, they are also there in non-commercial organizations as well. Now let me take educational institutions for example. Now all the government schools and other schools, they can either go for low leadership, they can go for product service differentiation or niche category. Now if one particular educational institution caters specifically to MCOM graduates and their service level is really good, then they come under product differentiation. Now, if educational institutions they cater to all masters and all bachelors, their service is good, but their prices are little less, they come under the low cost leadership. Then the third category is niche category. So there are many colleges which are say charitable and religious organizations, and if they cater to a religious one community of any one particular community or caste or creed, or they for just one particular education. Let me give an example of any sports or cultural or artistic events. They come under the niche category. So these are the broad categories in any business line or in any services. An entrepreneur has to decide where his product stands, what and which strategy he has to adopt. So these are the important pricing strategies which an entrepreneur needs to be aware of. Okay. Now, why do we need entrepreneurs? So why can't a person and take up a job, or why does India need entrepreneurs? So entrepreneurs create more new businesses. They don't create more businesses, they create newer, more value addition to the customers. So people's life are will be become a lot easier based on that entrepreneur's innovation. The second one is they create new markets. So existing markets are there. So the market can either be growing market, or it is a maturity market, or it is a declining market. So right now for since smartphones came, for the keypads phones, it is a declining market. So of being in the existing market wherein there are a lot of competitors, entrepreneurs create new markets. So they create new markets and make sure that more customers come in that market, as well as other participants are also there. Employment generation. Yes, it is no doubt that India has one of, like, there is a lot of unemployment in India. So employment generation does not only cater to unemployment, it also caters to underemployment. So underemployment is one of the most ignored aspects when GDP forecast is being made. What is underemployment? So let us say a person can do more job, but he settles for a job which is lesser than his or her caliber. So that is called as underemployment. So entrepreneurs and new entrepreneurship businesses, they generate employment activities. They transform novices to experts. So novice is an amateur, or he is an initial person or a fresher. So they inculcate, so entrepreneurs provide an opportunity wherein newcomers or freshers become expert in that field of domain. So that is how entrepreneurs contribute to transform novices to experts. And as you are aware, entrepreneurs add to the national income as well as capita income. So national income is the measure, a yardstick of a nation's wealth, whereas per capita income is nation's wealth divided by the number of population. So national income in general sense is how much wealth is there in India. Per capita income is wealth per person. So India has an imbalance between national income and a per capita income. National income is one among the top 10, whereas per capita income is not even one among the top 50. Per capita income in India is less. So entrepreneurs they to achieve balance between national income and per capita income. The next point is they add to stakeholders' wealth. No, I'm just not saying shareholders or investors, it is the stakeholders' wealth. So businesses, they generate profits, so their shareholders' wealth increases. Because they generate profits, they pay taxes, so the government's wealth increases. Because they have more sales, they purchase more items, which means their suppliers will increase. And they need legal compliances, so they take assessment of legal departments. So the lawyers and the auditors and even the accountants, their incomes also increase. So it increases the stakeholders' wealth and not merely investors' wealth. So this is why I have given it as a stakeholder and not just a shareholder or an investor. The last point is increased social responsibility activities. So many corporates, educational institutions, and other non-profit organizations, they perform a lot of social responsibility activities. So one example is Infosys Foundation. The other example is our KLES Nijilingappa College. So all NPOs and non-profit organizations, trusts, and even companies for that matter, they increase social responsibility activities. So they work to the benefit of the poor or environment or yoga or any advancements that are advancement of general public utility, which is there under income tax act. So if more social responsibility activities are there, the quality of living of people increase. So their mental happiness would also increase. This is how entrepreneurs play a key role in increasing the social responsibility activities in the country. So these are just some of the points as to why India requires more entrepreneurs. So these are some of the underestimated areas of business an entrepreneur would say not look into to a great extent. One is human resource. Now, pay human resource, it doesn't matter if the human resource is costlier, but if that person is competent and that person able to generate more sales or revenue, then one such person would be enough than hiring 2 to 3 people who do the same job. So adequate and competent human resource has to be looked into. The second one is the legal counsel. So they should have the right legal department to guide them in the compliances and ensure that the ease of doing business is maintained. The third one is cost of compliances. So business cannot be run with small amount of money. So the cost of compliance in India is quite high. As discussed, there are more statutes. There are a number of statutes that are applicable to a business. India has one of the stringent labor laws in anywhere in the world, and which is in fact outdated as well. So the entrepreneurs have to be aware of all the legal and regulatory departments which are applicable to the business. The fourth one is the data and database. So this plays a data is the new oil. If you have a doubt in the statement, you can look at Reliance share price. How many investors are investing in data database. So why data is required? So the more data business has about its customers, so the more data business has about the customers, the more data it has to take business decisions. It can analyze the trends and patterns of customer behavior. Data and database is also important to ensure good customer relationships are being followed. So that is why if any of you have created an account in Swiggy or Zomato, they ask for your date of birth, and once you have created an account, your database is there. And whenever you have it is your date of birth, they send you emails wishing you on that date. So it plays an important role. Data and database plays an important role in customer relationships, in supplier relationships, and also for software companies, it is the data and database which fetches them more revenue and valuations. So data and database is often highly neglected by budding entrepreneurs, which should not be there. They should take a good lot of care about it. Now the fifth one is business continuity management. As the name suggests, This is managing the continuity of the business. Business continuity management to ensure that business is not closed down in the near future. Now, COVID-19 pandemic came in India in the end of March. We are still in the unlock phase 2.0. So, organizations which had a good business continuity management, they were able to work from home, work from remote places. Whereas organizations who are highly labor driven, so operations that are highly labor driven and not automated driven, they suffered during the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, someone is requesting for annotation. Oh, so repairs and maintenance. So repairs and maintenance is often not factored in their operating budgets. It cannot be said that all machineries and equipments work properly. So the repairs and maintenance costs would not be factored in the business. Now, these two factors which are highlighted in blue, they are one of the most important factors. Entrepreneur's worth. So right now, if I am starting a business, should compare two scenarios there. I'm starting a business. Second, I'm being employed elsewhere. If I'm being employed elsewhere, what would have been my salary there? And what would have been the cost to that company or organization? So that cost should also be added here to factor the profit in the profit margin to determine the price of the goods or services. So often entrepreneurs do not do that. They try to compete with the say entrepreneurs will not look into this factor. Suppose if he gives up his business and goes elsewhere, and if he is worth 10 lakhs, let us say for example, that amount of 10 lakh per year has to be factored while preparing the budgets to decide the price of the product and also the profit margin which has to be decided. This is factoring entrepreneurs' worth in the business. Also, the intellectual property should also be factored in the business. Now, there is no particular measurement of intellectual property, but intellectual property has to be safeguarded. Let me give you one example. Suppose an entrepreneur starts a restaurant of a niche product. Now he hires chef in his business and the chef are the one who cooks the product. So signing a non-disclosure agreement towards the recipes of the product will make sure that the chef do not disclose the process preparing that dish to any other persons. So these are some of the factors which not many entrepreneurs are aware of. And the fifth one is emotional quotient. How is emotional quotient different than intelligent quotient? IQ is one which is decided when we are born. Emotional quotient is what we can develop and learn as and when we grow. Emotional quotient emotional quotient comprises of empathy, better human relationships, good soft skills, the way one person interacts with another person. So, as you are aware, people who have higher EQ are the ones who become managers, executive, and owners. Whereas people who have a higher IQ, they often end up being employees or managers of one particular domain. So it is the emotional quotient which makes a person become a good employer rather than an employee. So emotional quotient has to be learned. So emotional quotient comprises of soft skills, good mannerisms, the way a person interacts with another person, how well he presents himself, what he does in ethical dilemmas, integrity, objectivity, ethical behavior. These all come under emotional quotient. So these are the highly underestimated areas of the business which an entrepreneur needs to focus. Yes. Now here we discussed as to the type of legal entity in the key consideration. Now entrepreneurs and budding businessmen, these are the legal entities which can be formed in India and for carrying on the businesses. Now you have proprietorship, you have partnership or limited liability partnership, you have association of persons or body of individuals, and you have companies. So how many persons are required to start a proprietorship? One person is enough. That is why the name sole proprietorship. For a partnership or an LLP, you need two or more. So one person cannot be a partner. So that does partnership and LLP minimum require two people. Now, association of persons or body of individuals, usually three or above. Trusts, cooperative societies, joint ventures, they all come under AOP or BOI. So minimum three or more should be there in AOP or BOI. Now for a company, minimum two persons are required for a private company and minimum seven are required for a public company. These are the number of persons who are required to form the legal entity. Then you have the preliminary expenses, which is the cost of expenses in starting up the firm, the legal entity, and to bring it to a position of carrying the business. It is very low for a sole proprietorship. To give an example, all the sole proprietor needs to do is open the shutter of a shop and start the business. So for a partnership or an LLP, the preliminary expenditures are medium. So they need to apply for a deed, which is the incorporation deed. They have to get the PAN of the partnership or firm. They have all the preliminary expenditures. They have market expenses are there. So the preliminary expenditures are medium in the case of AOP, BOI as well as partnership firm. For a company, the preliminary expenditures is high. Now you might have said that government would have pushed circular saying that companies can be incorporated with zero capital. Yes, zero capital companies can be formed, but preliminary expenditures would be high. So the professional fees would be high, and the getting registered, the registration charges for the company would be high. So these are all the some of the things which entrepreneurs are not aware of, or the preliminary expenditures would not be budgeted adequately. Legal compliances. So for a sole proprietorship firm, the legal compliances is low. They just have to comply with the tax laws and the labor laws if the number of laborers exceed that particular act requirements. Now, partnership, it is medium because Indian Partnership Act does not uh, is not stringent in compliances, whereas LLP just has certain requirements of legal compliances, like filing annual returns with in the register of companies or conducting audits if, say, the turnover or capital contribution exceeds certain limits. For AOP or BOI, it is there. It is medium because the tax provisions applicable to sole proprietorship, the same provisions will not be applicable to AOP or BOI. Let me give a trust for an example. So a trust has to, if it earns rupees 100, it has to spend rupees 85 in that particular year. Or if it is unable to spend 85 in that particular year, it has to accumulate it for over 5 years. So these are some of the laws that are applicable for AOP and BOIs, which they have to follow. So the legal compliances for company is very high. Now for a company, apart from the tax and labor laws, Companies Act 2013 is a statute which all the companies have to follow. But if the company is a listed company, it also should follow SEBI guidelines and RBI guidelines as well. So again, private limited company, so legal compliances of public company is more than a private limited company, and say legal compliances of listed company is more than an unlisted company. So these are the legal compliances. Again, entrepreneur should just be aware of which are the statutes that his business entity has to be aware of, and his legal team and department should be solid. So this is the ideal scenario. So sole proprietorship is ideal for small to medium operations. So because the owner is directly involved in his operations, he is aware of what is happening in the business. So that is why sole proprietorship is ideal for small to medium scale operations. Now the partnerships or LLPs, they are ideal for medium to large scale operations. Now let us say there are 4 to 5 partners who are all engineers and who are expert in the product development. But to manage the business, they should also need good finance team, good legal team, good HR team, and good employees. So they need to hire more employees. So in that case, sole proprietorship, he will be faced with a lot of burden if the operations are large scale operations. So it would be better for partnerships, and so it would be better to form a partnership or an LLP if the operations are medium to large scale operations. Similarly, for AOP or BOI, medium to large scale operations apply. And for a company, it is medium to large scale. So there is no upper limit for the scale of operations a company can do. As you are aware, in company, the ownership is different from the management. Management represent the company and ownerships are separate. They are the shareholders. Management are answerable to the shareholders. So if you require more management and the number of shareholders are also more, then forming a company would be better than forming a partnership or an AOP or BOI. Now, how can investors invest in these particular entities? So investor can only invest in debt instruments for a proprietorship firm because the capital is, since it is one person, what he brings in the business is the capital. Investor can invest only in debt. They can give it as a loan or a debt or a bank loans or any other matter. So for a partnership, investor can either provide debt or they can become the partners in the firm. Yes, companies can also be a partner in a partnership firm. It need not be individuals. So if a company is investing in a partnership, company can also be a partner. So any investor can invest in the capital or a debt in a partnership firm. Similar is the case with OP or BOI. They can invest in debt or they can provide contribution. If it is a trust, it is called as corpus fund or general fund, which contribute to capital. And that is how investors can either invest in debt or contribution of OP or BOI. Now in company, they can invest. Okay. So for in companies, investors can either invest in debt instruments, they can invest in equity capital, or they can invest in preference capital. So they can invest in equity capital or preference shares of a company. So these are the alternatives which are available for those entrepreneurs who seek investors. So for entrepreneurs who want to start a sole proprietorship firm, you need to be aware that you cannot collect capital contributions from investors. It should be only by debt. And the next slide deals about the incorporation formalities which are there. And these are the requirements of the different legal entities. Now, sole proprietorship is not bound by any document. So only a banner or a poster or a website is enough to start a sole proprietorship firm. Whereas for a partnership firm or an LLP, a limited liability partnership, the partnership deed is the governing document or the LLP deed is the governing document. They contain the rules and regulations as to how a partnership or an LLP has to function, the line of businesses, the partner's responsibilities, duties, and rights, and the partner's liability clauses, and any other restrictions which are being placed on the partners. So, this is the incorporation deed. AOP or BOI are governed by an agreement or a trust deed for that matter. Agreement which is enforceable by law is called contract, and deed is the document which contains many contracts. So it is a governing document for any legal entity. So you have joint venture agreement, facility sharing agreements. So they all come under agreements. AOP or BOI, Association of Persons, Body of Individuals. If it is a cooperative society, it has a cooperative society's deed. For company, you're all aware it is incorporation. The documents are memorandum of association and articles of association. They're also called as the bylaws of company. Then you have the governing statute. So other than tax and labor laws, for sole proprietorship firm, it need not comply with any other law because there is no governing statute for it. Business operations can be done the easiest in the sole proprietorship among the all the legal entities. Whereas for partnership, it is the Indian Partnership Act 1932, and for limited liability partnership, it is Limited Liability Partnership Act 2008. So these are called as governing statutes for partnerships and LLP, which means any partnership is bound by that Partnership Act and limited liability firm is bound by that LLP Act. So again, for AOP and BOI, there is no governing statute. It is predominantly the agreements. Yes, but if it is a trust or a cooperative society, they come under the Indian Trust Act or one of the provisions of Income Tax Act or Cooperative Societies Act. So based on the type of AOP or BOI which is formed, the governing statute would be applicable. Now for the companies, it is Companies Act 2013, and if it is a listed company, SEBI regulations are applicable, and these are the governing statutes for companies. So there are various forms of companies which are there: private limited, public limited, one person company, foreign company, Section 8 company. Again, Section 8 can also be a private or a public. So they are all governed under Companies Act. The type of company which has to be formed, this is the governing statute for companies. And mandatory documents that are required to start a proprietorship firm, it is just PAN. So for a partnership firm, it is PAN, and for a LLP, it is PAN and its LLP index number. So it is LLP identification number, which is given by the ROC, Register of Companies. Yes, sir, sure. I'll be sharing the PPT right after the presentation. So it is the PAN and LLPIN. And for AOP and BOI, a mere PAN is enough. But if it is a trust or a cooperative society, they require separate registrations under those statutes. And for a company, it is SIN is so why SIN, PAN, and TAN? Now, because to ensure ease of doing business in India, a company, once if it is incorporated, it comes with company index number, PAN, as well as TAN. So in one application, all these three documents are being provided. So these are the mandatory document. Optional registrations are you can either be registered under startup or as an MSME. And if your turnover is more than 20 lakhs or 40 lakhs, then you should be registered under GST. So they are all optional documents. As and when required, the registrations can be taken. Now, what is the main focus of the investors or say the capital contributors in these kind of entities? For a sole proprietorship firm, the proprietor's main focus is profit or surplus. Now, in partnership and LLP, the partners look for profits or surplus as well as remuneration. Yes, partners can draw monthly salaries or remunerations, which is permitted under Partnership Act. So they also focus on remunerations, profits, or surplus. They also focus on drawings as well. Now, AOP and BOI, it is major profits or surplus and remuneration, similar to partnership and LLPs. Again, if it is a non-profit organization, they just focus on carrying out their charitable activities in India. Now, in company, the investor focus is one, the profits of the company should be adequate, it should not be in loss. The second, any shareholders expect dividends. So let me just give an example. If a company has 10 crore of profit, investors can take a dividend of 1 crore or 2 crores or 5 crores or even 10 crores, subject to the provisions of Companies Act. So profits can be different and dividends paid to the shareholders can be different. Yes. Now you have heard of Startup India initiatives wherein government is providing a lot of benefits for startups. Now, can sole proprietorship be eligible to be registered as a startup? No. Can a partnership or LLP firm be registered? Yes. Can an AOP or BOI be registered? No. For a company, only private limited company can be registered as a startup, subject to the guidelines that are being provided by the government. So now the entrepreneurs or the budding businessmen, they would like to understand what exactly is a startup. For this is the slide. So the startup can either be a private limited company, it can be a registered partnership firm. Please note, it is not an unregistered partnership firm. It should be a registered partnership firm, registered with registrar of firms, or a limited liability partnership. It can be called as a startup only for a period of 10 years from its incorporation date or registration date. So only in the first 10 years of incorporation or registration, it will be considered as a startup. Beyond 10 years, it will not be considered as a startup. So turnover in any financial year should not exceed 100 crores. Now, if the revenue or the top line, which investors call, if their revenue or turnover is more than 100 crores, it will cease to be called startup. Now, can every private limited company or a partnership firm or an LLP be registered as a startup? No. They have to satisfy this fourth condition. So, such working towards innovation of new products, services, technology, any area which involves innovation, and development or improvement of products, processes, or services. So these products can be existing products or any of the new products. Development of product, process, or service signifies to new products. Improvement of products, process, or services is improving existing products. Or it can be a scalable business model with a high potential. High potential for what? It can either be employment generation, adding more jobs, or wealth creation. Wealth creation of stakeholders, which means investors, suppliers, government, any other stakeholder. So this is what is called as a startup, which means it can either be one of the three entities up to a period of 10 years from incorporation. Turnover in any of the financial year should not be more than 100 crores, and it should be working towards innovation, development, improvement, scalable business model with high potential, and it should be employment generation. It should add to employment generation and wealth creation. So recognizing that entrepreneurs are very crucial for the growth of India, the government of India, both the state governments as well as the central government, has provided a huge opportunities in the recent years. One such initiative is the Startup India initiative, wherein government for a LLP and a private limited company, they can opt for any three consecutive years, and the profits need not be taxed. Profits will not be taxed. So that is the Startup India initiative. Government itself is providing a hub. So hub is nothing but it is a collection or congregation of people. Now 4 to 5 educational institutions together, they may form an association for the benefit of students or educational institutions. Like that, government is providing a platform wherein startups can interact with each other. They can ensure that all the startups are becoming successful. They also provide various loans. Government is giving market. They can register their patents in India at a very lesser price. Intellectual property can be registered in India. The second one is MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises. So, how is an MSME different from a startup? An entity can register itself as an MSME as well as a startup. MSME primarily safeguards the income generation of an entity. If an entity is registered as an MSME, any payments made to it So the due date of the payment that is mentioned in the invoice, payments have to be made within the due date of invoice. If payments are not made within the due date of invoices, the parties have to pay interest along with the bill amount which is provided. So this is one of the very useful statutes which government has introduced. MSMED Act came in the year 2006, and this has the overriding effect on all other statutes, which means MSME Act has been given the first preference. So let us say my invoice contains due date of 60 days, whereas in the MSMED Act it is 45 days. Within 45 days, my customer or the organization has to pay me the invoice amount. Else, he or the organization should pay me interest as well. The third one is foreign trade policies. Foreign trade policies are major to encourage people of India, business in India, to export goods or services outside India. One such initiative is that any export of services are not charged under GST. Now, since I can relate to this, since if I am providing my chartered accountant services to any person in India, 18% GST would be applicable. Now, suppose I am providing the same services to a foreign entity or a foreign individual, I need not charge GST on my invoices because of this foreign trade policies that are there. And also in the GST Act, you can export services without payment of GST. And FDI policies. So FDI is to predominantly attract foreign investors to invest in the businesses of India. They can either be direct route or through the governments. So a foreign entity can start its own business in India, its own subsidiary company in India, or it can invest in the businesses of Indian companies. So that is how FDI policies are being framed. India has one of a very good FDI policies among the nations in the world. Apart from this, government is also providing training and development programs for entrepreneurs. So government has made tie-up with a lot of banking institutions, educational institutions, to make sure that the entrepreneurial aspect of students or professionals is being brought up. And government is also providing startup incubators wherein startups are being nurtured, and government will provide guidance as to how businesses have to be made, what are the legal cost of compliances, and such other things. Tax and labor law reforms. Now, today we may have professional tax, but in the near future we may not have professional tax. So we had Central Excise Act, VAT, CST Act before GST Act came into being. Once GST Act came, all the other acts were abolished. So as such, tax and labor laws, a lot of reforms are being happening in the tax and labor laws. And if those reforms lead to ease of doing business, then it will attract more entrepreneurs and more foreign investors as well. So these are various initiatives which the Indian governments are providing in India. Now, despite this, just a minute, let me drink some water. Sorry. Yeah. So despite this, many startups fail because of these 6 reasons. If these 6 reasons are, if these 6 areas are protected, no one can no one can stop the startup from being a successful one. First one is poor co-founders agreement. What is co-founders agreement? Now, let us say 3 to 4 people have formed a partnership agreement. Now, partnership deed is governs there. Many people are happy with the partnership deed. Now, suppose they enter into a co-founders agreement wherein no founder will exit the partnership firm after until 5 years or 6 years. So in that case, up to 5 years or 6 years, the initial capital is secure. So this co-founders agreement is a lot more found in MNCs and the bigger firms rather than the small and mid-sized firms. So in small and mid-sized business entities, not many co-founders agreement are present, whereas having a co-founder agreement is very essential and it is a good industry practice. The second one is not aligning the capital with the type of legal entity. Again, as I mentioned here in the second point and the third point, preliminary expenditures low, medium, and high. So they should match the capital with the type of legal entity. If their capital is less, they should go for a legal entity wherein the compliances are less. But if their capital is more and they need more human resources, they can go for a legal entity which is solid and can offer flexibility in operations. So this is the second point, not aligning capital with the type of legal entity, which results to failure of startups. The third one is not seeking appropriate legal consultation before starting the startup. So before starting a startup, entrepreneurs should approach a competent legal department, a legal professional who guides them as to how an entrepreneur, say, how a businesses have to be started. By legal consultation, I also mean that they can go for educational institutions, wherein since educational institutions have a database of all their alumni and present students, many of them who are in like business, who are in the business field, they can guide the students or any new entrepreneurs as to the key areas to focus while conducting a business. So entrepreneurs do not seek appropriate legal consultation when they start their business. The fourth one is poor financial management. Now, there is a saying in Sanskrit, a bird worth one in hand is better than two in the bush. So, if you have adequate finances with you, manage those finance well, invest it in the businesses to ensure that your business operations are being carried smoothly. Now, suppose if the capital is less and the debt borrowed is huge, then if the operations are not there, entrepreneurs will be they will suffer losses in the business and they will not even have amount to pay the debts which they have borrowed. So this is one of the poor financial management issues which most entrepreneurs face. So to overcome this, they should have a good finance manager or a financial advisor. Then again, the fifth point is improper budgeting of operating and capital expenditures. So how much budgets are there to operate the business and how much capital requirements are required to increase the operations of the business. So in the budgeting for the operating expenditures, entrepreneur should also focus on inculcating his worth in the business. As an example which I gave, if he had dropped his business and went for an employment, he would have been worth 10 lakhs per annum salary. That 10 lakhs per annum should be factored in the budgets which he is preparing for to determine the price of the goods or services or any of the business lines which he or she is being provided. The second one is capital expenditures, which encompasses of say plant, equipment, buying a land, scaling operations, and their cash management, so their trade receivables management. So these all come under operating expenditures as well as capital expenditures. The last and the most detrimental factor for any business is improper timing of sell-offs or share issues. Now, this is a COVID-19 pandemic, and even before this, this practice was always there. So, when there is a budding startup, in the initial years, startup would not have profits. They will come big giants and angel investors or multinational companies who value the startups at a much lesser price and they buy the shares of the startup or they completely take over the startups. So this is called as predatory pricing. Predatory pricing is they offer a huge amount to the startup and to make sure that they kill the competition. So startups should not be sold off to investors or they should not be shares should not be issued to the investors until the startup has adequate database, adequate operations, and so that their valuation will be more. So the last point, improper timing of sell-offs or share issue is one such factor why many of the startups fail. So now coming to this, how educational institutions in India have been playing roles in ensuring that more and more entrepreneurs are being, say more or more entrepreneurs are being circulated in the market. So educational institutions, they build leadership qualities and inculcate risk-taking appetite in the students. Now, without taking risks, expecting rewards cannot be there, and without having leadership qualities, no decisions can be taken. So educational institutions across the country, they build leadership qualities in the students, and they ensure that their risk-taking appetite is increased. Second, educational institutions encourage innovations and new ideas. For example, a science exhibition, the projects that they are being provided, trade fairs that they are being arranged. So they are encouraging innovations wherein students participate in such activities. They make use of the potential that is there in them and they bring forth new ideas. Third one is they prepare entrepreneurs for uncertain future. The future is uncertain. We may not know what will happen in the near future. So that is what makes living in the present a very good idea. But they should plan for the future. So educational institutions teach entrepreneurs how to manage the finances well. For example, any problems that we solve in the class, they are very relevant in the real world scenarios. Let us say working capital management, budgeting, whichever is there, they are all relevant in real life scenarios. So just looking at not just looking at it from the book point of view and exam point of view, they also are say all the decisions in the companies are being taken on based on budgets. Budgets are one of the greatest tools that is there in the to ensure that business survives in the near future. The fourth one is they ensure greater chances of startup success. So how, as I mentioned, any educational institution is a database of students. They have database of students, and it is the students who either become the businessmen or they become entrepreneurs or they become employers. So by organizing seminars, sessions, they make sure that the newer generation are made aware of what it takes to be in the real life scenario. Also, schools and educational institutions have campus placements wherein good campuses come and hire students. The fifth point is they provide projects that resemble real life scenarios. Now, I heard some of the students saying that in their college they are given a project wherein this usually happens in MBA marketing. They have to sell the products to a certain person, to a certain amount of people as a part of project. So by providing projects that resemble real life scenarios, educational institutions are making sure that that particular student who intends to be a businessman or entrepreneur, he works on his skills, he works on his strengths, and he ensures that any risks that are taken are limited and he shall be prepared to take more risks in the future. The last but one is mentorship and guidance. No doubt, teachers, faculties, and other professors, they provide mentorship and guidance. They are all individuals who have great experience and expertise in that domain, and a lot of students are seek that guidance and mentorship to ensure that this is an intangible knowledge that the teachers are providing. So by seeking mentorship and guidance, students are aware of what they have to do in life, and these are the areas that wherein their potential is there. The last point is value added and certificate courses. So the new education policy 2020 was unveiled and it was received with a lot of positive opinions. And one other than that, many educational institutions provide value added and certificate courses, which are in addition to the regular syllabus that the uh, students are pursuing. Now, these value added and certificate courses bring about the innovative side of the students. They ensure that the student works on his strengths and weaknesses, and the student will be aware of what is required in the real life scenario. For example, soft skills courses, Tally ERP9 courses, these are all value added and certificate courses which make sure that when a student goes for a job or he wants to start his or own business, he has minimum experience as to understand the various aspects of business, like how accounting functions, how cash management functions, how human resource relationship works, how customer satisfaction works, what are the things that are to be done in those areas. These can be learnt in value added and certificate courses. So that's about it. Now, do any of you have questions? Any of you have questions about this? So I hope I was able to convey the entrepreneurship development and what it takes to be an entrepreneur in India. So,
Rakshit?
yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, Rakshit. Thank you for your wonderful session, informative session. So
Thank you, sir.
it's a time to propose the vote of thanks. So, vote of thanks will be proposed by Yogesh.
Good afternoon, everyone. I, Yogesh Kumar AB, alumnus of this great institute, now working as assistant professor of commerce. Today, we have successfully completed IQAC initiated UGC Stride sponsored 2 days national level entrepreneurship development program on starting a business in India. Both the session was informative, fruitful, and beneficial to all the budding entrepreneurs and research scholars. It's my privilege to propose vote of thanks. On this occasion, I would like to thank our resource person of this program, Mr. Rakshit S. Chakravarti, Chartered Accountant, on behalf of KLE Society's Board of Management, Principal, Faculty and students of KLE Society's S. Nijilingappa College for his elaborate presentation on how to become an entrepreneur. Thank you once again, sir. I would like my sincere thanks to our beloved principal sir, Dr. Arun Kumar B. Sonapanavar sir, for his constant motivation and guidance. I would like to express my sincere thanks to Dr. Srimati Mahananda B. Chittawadagi ma'am, MCOM and IQAC coordinator, for organizing and successfully completing this program. And I would like to express a sincere thanks to our beloved HOD, Dr. C.V. Koppat sir, for his support and guidance. Now, I would like to thank all the dear participants of this program for showing their interest in the program. Thank you all. Let's meet again. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you, dear participants.
Thank you, everyone. Pleasure to be with this gathering. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Let us meet
Good
again.
afternoon. Yeah, ma'am. It is an announcement regarding feedback, YouTube link, and EDP PPTs. Dear participant, the feedback link will be provided in the chat box, which should be filled and submit immediately, along with YouTube link also shared. The EDP PPTs will be shared with Telegram and WhatsApp group. The session will open 15 minutes. Please submit your feedback and please subscribe the YouTube link also. Thank you, one and all.